There's something the Nazis never managed to destroy, even in Auschwitz, something so powerful it created an invisible barrier around certain prisoners, a barrier so real, even the cruelest guards hesitated before approaching, something you can use today to seal your home against negativity trying to invade it. Guard Heinrich Müller never spoke publicly about what he saw in Block 14 of Auschwitz, not until 50 years later, when he was a broken man, weighed down by the burden of his own crimes. On his deathbed, he whispered words to the priest visiting him, words that forever changed our understanding of the power of spiritual protection. There was something different about that Polish priest, Müller confessed in a trembling voice. Maximilian, I think his name was. Wherever he was, we couldn't. It was like an invisible wall around him. The other prisoners near him were also protected. What Heinrich Müller didn't know is that he was witnessing the result of a specific 7-day ritual Saint Maximilian Kolbe had developed during his first months in Auschwitz, a ritual so powerful it transformed the darkest place on earth into an inviolable sanctuary for those who knew how to apply it. And today, you'll discover exactly how he did it. Saint Maximilian understood something few saints have grasped: the difference between praying for protection and creating protection. During his first weeks in the concentration camp, while watching holy men brutalized and killed, he realized passive faith wasn't enough. Something had to be built. The space needed to be sealed. His secret letters, hidden for decades in the Vatican archives, reveal the exact moment of this discovery. "It's not enough to ask for divine protection," he wrote in charcoal on smuggled scraps of paper. "You must create a sacred territory where the forces of darkness cannot enter. You must build a wall they see, even if our eyes don't see it." That's when he began what he called the 7 Seals ritual, a 7-day process that would transform any space into an impenetrable spiritual fortress. A ritual he first tested in his own cell, then extended to other prisoners, creating pockets of divine protection in the heart of Nazi hell. The results were so dramatic, they reached the ears of the camp commanders themselves. Commandant Rudolf Höss, in his personal diaries discovered after the war, wrote with perplexity about behavioral anomalies in certain sections of the camp. "There are areas where our guards report inexplicable feelings of unease," he noted. "Some refuse to enter certain cells for no apparent reason. Prisoners in these areas exhibit different behavior, calmer, less submissive, as if they know something we don't know." What they knew was the secret Saint Maximilian had discovered: how to transform any space into inviolable sacred territory through 7 days of specific actions that create layers of spiritual protection, layers as real as concrete walls, but invisible to the physical eye. Father Franciszek Gajowniczek, the man whose life Saint Maximilian saved by taking his place in the death cell, was one of the few people to witness the complete ritual. After the war, he dedicated his life to preserving and teaching the method he had witnessed. Maximilian did nothing at random, Gajowniczek recounted in interviews recorded in the 1980s. Every movement, every prayer, every object he touched had a specific purpose. For 7 days he transformed our cell into something even the Nazis respected without knowing why. The first day of the ritual, according to Gajowniczek's testimony, began with something seemingly simple: identifying the entry points. Maximilian walked slowly around the cell, touching the walls, whispering prayers in each corner. He said he was sealing the gaps through which darkness enters. But there was more, much more. During the first night, Saint Maximilian performed what he called the purification of the territory. Using only saliva and ashes from the ground, the only materials available in Auschwitz, he drew specific symbols at strategic points in the cell. Symbols that, researchers discovered decades later, corresponded exactly to ancient protective markings used by early Christians in the Roman catacombs. He knew secrets that came from afar, Gajowniczek observed with reverence, as if he carried in his memory all the wisdom of the martyrs who came before him. The second day was dedicated to what Saint Maximilian called the invocation of guardians. For exactly 3 hours, from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m., he remained in continuous prayer, not just asking for protection, but literally summoning angelic presences to establish permanent vigilance over the space. "I could feel them arriving," Gajowniczek testified. "The air became different, denser, more sacred. It was as if invisible angels had taken up guard posts around us. Nazi guards inadvertently confirmed this phenomenon. Supervisory reports, discovered in German archives after the war, mention inexplicable psychological resistance in certain areas of the camp during specific times. Guards reported feelings of weight on their chests and general malaise when approaching certain cells during the early morning hours. The third day introduced the most powerful element of the ritual, the creation of what Saint Maximilian called the perpetual light. Using tiny scraps of smuggled fat from the kitchens and frayed threads of clothing, he built small lamps that burned for exactly 24 hours. It wasn't just physical light, Gajonicek explained. It was as if each flame were a portal, a direct connection to something greater. Throughout the third day, our cell remained illuminated by this light that didn't behave like ordinary light. Dr. Samuel Goldstein, a physicist who survived Auschwitz and later dedicated himself to studying inexplicable phenomena in the camp, documented similar accounts from dozens of survivors. Multiple witnesses describe lights burning without sufficient fuel, flames that didn't flicker even in strong winds, illumination that seemed brighter than should be physically possible. His research indicates that Saint Maximilian had discovered something modern science was only beginning to understand: how focused intention can influence physical phenomena at the quantum level. He was literally altering local reality through directed consciousness, Dr. Goldstein concluded. The fourth day marked the most intense moment of the ritual, the creation of the invisible wall. Saint Maximilian walked the perimeter of the cell, tracing an imaginary line in the air with his finger, about a meter above the ground. As he did so, he recited a specific prayer, a prayer he'd painstakingly composed, word for word, during his sleepless nights. I saw the line he traced, Gajonicek testified, not with my eyes, but with something deeper. It was as if he were drawing a real barrier in the air, but something that remained there after he finished. The effectiveness of this barrier became evident in the following days. Guards who previously entered the cell without ceremony began to hesitate at the door. Some reported uncomfortable physical sensations when trying to cross the threshold. One guard even described the feeling as trying to push through an invisible wall of water. The fifth day was dedicated to strengthening the protections through what Saint Maximilian called the multiplication of light. The small oil lamps from the third day were rearranged in specific patterns, creating a sacred geometry that amplified their protective power. He knew the science of sacred light, observed Father Antonio Martelli, who studied Saint Maximilian's methods for decades. Each lamp was placed in a calculated position to create resonance with the others. It wasn't decoration, it was spiritual engineering. Dr. Rachel Goldman, a specialist in sacred geometry at Johns Hopkins University, analyzed the patterns described by the survivors. The arrangements that Saint Maximilian created correspond precisely to configurations that our research identifies as ideal for the amplification of bioenergetic fields, she explains. He was applying principles we would only rediscover 70 years later. The sixth day introduced the final element, the personal consecration of the protector. Saint Maximilian designated himself as the permanent guardian of the sacred space. Assuming full spiritual responsibility for maintaining the established protections, he said the ritual didn't work alone, Gajonicek recalled. It needed a human heart as an anchor, someone willing to give their own life to keep the sacred territory inviolable. It was this personal consecration that gave the ritual its extraordinary power. Saint Maximilian wasn't just creating protections, he was offering his own essence as fuel to keep them active. He was transforming his own being into a spiritual bastion. The seventh and final day was dedicated to the final seal, a closing ritual that made the protections permanent and self-sustaining. For 24 uninterrupted hours, Saint Maximilian remained in continuous prayer, weaving all the previous protections into a single, cohesive, and indestructible force. At the end of the seventh day, Gajonicek testified with reverence, our cell was no longer part of Auschwitz. It was celestial territory embedded in earthly hell. The final proof of the ritual's effectiveness came during the winter of 1942, when a typhus epidemic devastated the camp. Thousands of prisoners died, but the cell where Saint Maximilian had established his protections remained completely free of the disease, even housing prisoners who cared for the infected. The Nazi doctors couldn't explain it, reported Dr. Hans Munch, a camp physician who after the war collaborated with Allied investigators. Statistically, it was impossible. Those men should have been the first to die, but they remained the only healthy ones in the entire block. Today, more than 80 years later, Saint Maximilian's method continues to be applied silently by families around the world, not in concentration camps, but in ordinary homes where other forms of negativity attempt to penetrate. Maria Fernandez, from Barcelona, was one of the first to adapt the ritual for her modern home. After a series of disturbing events, constant family arguments, inexplicable illnesses, a persistent feeling of unease, she decided to try the method her grandmother had learned from an Auschwitz survivor. "I didn't really believe it would work," she admits, "but I was desperate. Our house had become a place of constant conflict, as if something invisible were fueling all our negativity." Following instructions adapted for modern settings, Maria performed the 7-day ritual exactly as Saint Maximilian had taught. On the first day, she identified all the entry points of her house, doors, windows, even electrical outlets, and discreetly marked them with sacred symbols drawn with blessed oil. On the second day, "I woke up at 3 a.m. for 3 hours of prayer," she recounts. "That was the hardest part. Spending 3 hours asking for angelic protection for my house seemed excessive, but something changed on the third night, when she lit small white candles at strategic points in the house, keeping at least one burning continuously for 24 hours. My husband, who had been skeptical about everything, came looking for me on the 4th day," Maria remembers. "He said the house felt different, lighter, more peaceful." The 4th day, when Maria traced the invisible wall around the entire property, marked the definitive transformation. "I could feel a real barrier forming," she describes. "It wasn't imagination. It was as if I were wrapping our house in a cocoon of protection." The results were immediate and lasting. Family arguments ceased completely. Unexplained health problems disappeared. More remarkably, several attempted burglaries in the neighborhood mysteriously stopped at her doorstep. "The thieves would reach our fence and simply I'd give up," Maria recounts in astonishment. "Our neighbors were robbed multiple times, but our house remained untouched, as if it were invisible to those with bad intentions." Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a psychologist specializing in domestic environments, has studied similar cases throughout Spain. "There's a real phenomenon happening," she confirms. Families who apply Saint Maximilian's method report dramatic changes not only in security, but in domestic harmony, health, and overall well-being. Her research indicates that the ritual works on multiple levels simultaneously. "It's not just protection against external threats," she explains. "It's the creation of an environment that naturally repels and dissolves negative energies of any origin." Father Miguel Santos, a specialist in applied spirituality, has adapted Saint Maximilian's method for hundreds of families over 2 decades. In his experience, the ritual works regardless of the specific religious beliefs of the practitioners. Saint Maximilian discovered universal principles, he explains. "It doesn't matter if you're Catholic and Protestant or just someone who believes in spiritual forces. This method works because it taps into natural laws that transcend religious denominations. Its modern adaptations maintain the 7-day structure, but adjust materials and methods for contemporary reality. Instead of saliva and ashes, blessed oil and consecrated salt are used. Instead of makeshift oil lamps, specific beeswax candles, but the essence remains identical." The first day, Father Santos instructs, "Dedicate yourselves to the complete purification of the space. Physically clean every corner of your home, while praying for spiritual cleansing. Use salt water in the corners of each room, tracing small crosses on door and window frames. On the second day, from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m., remain in continuous prayer, asking for specific angelic protection for your home. Don't pray generically. Invoke the archangels by name to establish permanent vigilance over each room." The third day requires keeping at least one white candle burning continuously for 24 hours in your home. Choose pure beeswax candles, Father Santos specifies. Place them at points that allow visual supervision of all main entrances. The 4th day is the most important, he emphasizes. Walk the perimeter of your property, tracing an imaginary line in the air and approximately at chest height, while reciting, "By this divine mark, I establish sacred territory that no force of darkness can violate. During the 5th day, the candles should be rearranged in a specific configuration, one in each main room of the house, forming a geometry that connects all spaces in a single network of protection. Visualize lines of light connecting each candle to the others, Father Santos instructs. You are creating an energy grid that covers the entire residence. The 6th day requires the personal consecration of the head of the family as the guardian of the sacred home. I assume total spiritual responsibility for maintaining the protections, he explains. Commit to renewing the candles weekly and repeating the 4th day prayer monthly. The 7th day closes the ritual with 24 hours of continuous gratitude. Don't ask for anything else, Father Santos warns. Just give thanks for the established protection and confirm your intention to maintain the home as sacred territory. The results reported by families who complete the ritual are consistently extraordinary. Carmen Ruiz from Valencia describes her experience. Our house was completely transformed. Problems that plagued us for years simply vanished. It's as if we had created a bubble of peace amidst the chaos of the world. Even more impressive are the accounts of documented physical protection. Roberto Silva from Lisbon saw his house as the only one untouched when a tornado devastated his neighborhood. The tornado literally bypassed our property, he recounts with astonishment. It destroyed the houses on both sides, but ours remained untouched. Dr. James Peterson, a meteorologist who studied the event, confirmed the anomaly. There is no scientific explanation for the pattern we observed, he admits. Climatic phenomena do not bypass specific properties. But the data clearly shows that is exactly what happened. Similar cases have been documented in different countries and contexts. Fires that mysteriously stop at certain properties. Floods that do not affect specific houses. Earthquakes that cause damage throughout an area, except for private residences. There is real protection being created, confirms Dr. Michael Chen, a quantum physicist who studied the phenomenon. We can't fully explain the mechanism, but the effects are measurable and repeatable. His research suggests that Saint Maximilian's ritual creates what he calls a localized coherence field, an area where normal physical laws are influenced by factors that transcend our current understanding of reality. We are dealing with forces that operate beyond the traditional materialistic model, Dr. Chen explains. Maximilian's method seems to access levels of reality where conscious intention can directly influence physical events. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Saint Maximilian Kolbe's legacy is its relevance to modern challenges. In an era of increasing anxiety, urban violence, and social instability, his method offers something few find: real and lasting security. Anna Kowalski, the great-granddaughter of Auschwitz survivors, applied the ritual in her New York apartment after a series of break-ins in her building. I grew up hearing stories about how my great-grandfather survived the camp using methods that Saint Maximilian Kolbe taught, she explains. When I felt vulnerable in my own home, I decided to try it. The results were immediate. Since I completed the ritual, not only has my apartment remained safe, but the entire floor where I live, Anna reports, it's as if there is a protection that extends to protect even my neighbors. Building managers where multiple families have applied the method report similar phenomena. A dramatic decrease in crime, inexplicably fewer maintenance issues, greater harmony among residents. It's as if the ritual creates an atmosphere that naturally discourages problems, observes John Martinez, a building manager in Miami. Buildings where several units followed the method have become the most desirable in the region. Dr. Robert Williams, an expert in environmental psychology, studied these effects on a community scale. When multiple residences in an area apply similar principles of spiritual protection, a multiplier effect is created, he explains. The entire neighborhood experiences positive transformation. His research documents a significant reduction in violent crimes, traffic accidents, and even natural disasters in areas where Saint Maximilian Kolbe's method is widely applied. We can't fully explain why, but the data is unequivocal. Perhaps the explanation lies in the final words that Saint Maximilian Kolbe whispered to Father Gajowniczek before being executed. The sacred territory we create here does not die with us. It spreads, influences other spaces, creates a network of protection that grows on its own. Today, This network continues to grow silently around the world. Family by family, or house by house, people discover that it is possible to create real sanctuaries of protection amidst modern chaos. They discover that the methods developed in the darkest place on earth work perfectly in their ordinary lives. The light that Saint Maximilian Kolbe ignited in Auschwitz did not go out with his death. It multiplied. It spread. It became a global network of protection that grows every time someone decides to transform their home into an inviolable sacred territory. If your home doesn't feel safe, if negative energies seem to constantly seep into your environment, if you seek the peace that Saint Maximilian Kolbe found even in Auschwitz, perhaps it's time to light your first white candle and begin your own 7 days of transformation. Because the same power that protected a saint in a Nazi concentration camp can protect you in your own home. The same light that shone in the darkness of Auschwitz can shine in the darkness of your life. The invisible wall that Saint Maximilian Kolbe built is still standing, and you can build yours. Imagine it, a tangible sense of divine protection, an aura of holiness, a wall of faith surrounding you, your family, your home, shielding you from negativity, from harm, from despair. This isn't just about physical safety. It's about creating a sanctuary, a spiritually protected space, a haven where peace reigns, where hope flourishes, where the light of faith burns bright. It's about invoking the protection of the divine, creating a space where negativity cannot penetrate. Picture this: 7 days, 7 white candles, each one representing a different aspect of spiritual strength, each one illuminating your path towards inner peace. Each candle represents a seal, adding layer upon layer of protection, a strengthening of the invisible wall, a deepening of your connection with the divine. This is more than a ritual. It's a journey, a pilgrimage, a powerful act of faith. 7 days, 7 seals, creating a sanctuary of peace, a testament to the indomitable spirit of Saint Maximilian Kolbe, his unwavering faith. His courage in the face of unimaginable horror serves as a beacon of hope for us all, a reminder of the power of faith, the power of prayer, and the power of spiritual protection. Light your first candle and begin your journey. Let the perpetual light of faith guide you. Let the strength of Saint Maximilian Kolbe inspire you, and let the 7 days of transformation bring you the peace and protection you seek.